Hello, Reporter Room investigators. It's great to see you. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and today we're going to be talking about the Bryan Kohberger case. My job is to investigate crimes, potential suspects, and criminals, and I'd also like to share with you how to consider suspects, crime scenes, and evidence. So I'd like to start by thanking our channel members. Let me grab this really quick. Our producers, Diane and Sasha Angel, and our awesome channel members. You guys are the best. So we have a lot of stuff to dig into. So please Casey, welcome. It's great to see you. Okay, so let me add this in. All right, here we go. This is from The Independent. It's the traffic stop with Bryan Kohberger and the police officer.
You were in the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so
I was behind you the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically, you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you're on the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep.
Okay, so we all
Paying down debt can feel overwhelming.
So we've all seen the traffic stop with Bryan Kohberger, and we all had different takes on the traffic stop. Hey, Mama Bear. Some people felt like the traffic stop was just him trying to talk his way out of a ticket, whereas other people saw it as being much more manipulative. We're going to discuss that along with some other things that I think are really important. We're also going to look at the crime scene at the 1122 King Road house. We're going to consider the four victims, Maddie, Ethan, Kaylee, and Xana. Was this opportunistic or was this planned? I also want to take into consideration the childhood and education of BK, and how does this fit into his potential as a successful or unsuccessful perpetrator? Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but because BK is the only person who's been arrested, jailed, and indicted, I'm going to be discussing this case in terms of BK today. With that caveat, everything I'm sharing is my opinion, and opinions are not facts, so feel free to do your own research. So let me grab this really quick. And okay.
Kohberger was allegedly able to stab 4 Idaho college students to death in just a few minutes. Well, it's a big question for the prosecution to explain to the rest of us, specifically the jury, but some insight into his past may give us some clues. Turns out Kohberger knew how to use a knife. Bryan worked as a fish cutter. He was a fillet man when he was in high school, trained to cut and fillet raw fish. I know how to do it. Means you got to know how to use a knife.
Okay, so he was successful in terms of getting started, right? But what drove him and how did we get here? Let's dig into this. Okay, so I believe that this was planned. I do believe that, as I've shared with you before, that he practiced. I believe that October 21st and what happened to Buddy, also Buddy the dog, was also potentially practice. Allegedly, that has not been shown in court. And if haven't seen my video on that, it's a really good live stream. I have a whole playlist on the Bryan Kohberger case. So some people have attributed what happened to Buddy the dog to Brent Kopaka, but I've provided you with proof that the owners of the dog show that they actually have Buddy's collar. So the claims that Brent had his collar, these are not correct. Probably Brent had a dog or maybe a family pet at some point, and that's the collar. And some creators got a little bit mixed up about it. So let's talk about why the 1122 King Road House location was chosen. Why not go to the University of Idaho, right? Why were these particular victims selected? Why was the K-bar knife selected? We have a lot of things to dig into. And so let's get started. So I think the choice of the K-bar knife reveals a lot of information about the perpetrator. For example, it reveals that this crime was intimate. And what I mean by that is it was up close and personal. It indicates that the perpetrator had personal feelings about at least one, if not more, of the victims. Now, we've all discussed who we think the potential target of this was and who was the collateral damage. And I believe that the potential targets were either Kaylee or Maddie. But because Kaylee's parents have talked about BK liking so many of Maddie's photos on Instagram, I think that maybe, and because we know that he was approaching her, I think that maybe it was Maddie. However, because Kaylee family also reported that she had had a stalker, although that's been said to have been somebody else, it's also a concern that maybe there was somebody entering the house and going in and out. Leading up to this, we know that Xana's father changed the locks on her door. We haven't found out why because of the gag order yet, but I'm sure we'll hear more about this during the trial. So why use a K-bar knife? And I believe that this was personal. I believe he was driven by obsession and rage. And that is why he used a knife versus some other something less personal, like a gun. You could do something like that from the distance. I also think that that's why the location at the 1122 King Road house was chosen. First of all, I do believe he had surveilled the house, and we know from the phone pings, I believe they're going to line up phone pings with BK's vehicle. They're going to line up images of where his phone was pinging and show images of that car that was missing front plates, that Hyundai Elantra that allegedly belonged to BK. And they're going to line those up and show us that it was his phone actually pinging. And I predict that the defense is going to come up with something crazy like he was out driving around. Or maybe try to say that somebody stole his phone or something like this. That'll be the defense. Because I don't really think that Ann Taylor has a lot of places to go with this. If they have any images of that car that can be shown that it is his Hyundai Elantra, for example, a picture of him driving it or a license plate or partial plate of the car or some other distinguishing feature that shows that it is this car. So I believe he chose the 1122 King Road house in part because I think he was going to the house and he was fixated on the girls that were there. Oh my gosh, let me catch up with chat really quick. Mama Bear is here, Stacy's here, DM is here. Hey guys, great to see you. Jeff is here. Jeff says the Forged and Steel episode regarding K-bar knives was pretty vicious demonstration. I'm gonna see if that episode was pre-November 2022. Okay, great. Mike says if he freaky night this April like planned, I'm curious if he had targets in mind before moving there, if he asked criminals in his survey how they chose his target. That's really the $1 million question, isn't it? Mike, did he have targets prior to moving to Pullman, Washington? Is this why he chose Washington State? Because of its proximity to Moscow, or did he become fixated on one or more of the victims after he moved? And we're going to talk about that in just a second, so please stay with me. General Sorrow is here. Mike says, if he brought the knife in April, I'm in. Yeah, I think he brought it. I think he brought it with him. I think it was attached. I did a live stream with Nurse Ellison. We showed you how it was attached to the belt, and also um, how easily it could have been knocked out of that sheath. That sheath could have been knocked out, especially if he was holding it. So if it was attached to him, it would be much harder to knock that knife sheath loose. But if he was just holding it because he had put on a monkey suit, a jumpsuit to go in there to dexter himself out, well, then it would be a lot easier. And DM says, I agree. It was planned. His plan went sideways. Yes, it did. So let's talk more about that. His plan did go sideways. And I believe that either Maddie or Kaylee were the victims. I believe it was Maddie, just based off of what the Kaylee Gonzalez parents, Steve and Christy, have shared with us. And I also want to talk about BK's organizational level. But so let's go back to the house for a second. And we're going to talk about visual snow and go back to some of the ways that BK was describing himself in his teenage years. But I want to talk about his organizational level because there are two different types of organizational levels with perpetrators. One is called organized, and the other is called disorganized. Now, the organized perpetrator plans the crime out in advance. He or she may fantasize about committing the crime. He or she may practice. They will gather supplies that they need to carry out the crime. And I believe that BK does fall into the organized category for these reasons. I believe this was planned. I believe that he thought about it. He fantasized about it. I believe that he practiced. And I think that his searches will show that he gathered out supplies that he needed to carry out the crime. Excuse me. So in this case, I believe that that the prosecution will show that BK did order that Dickies jumpsuit. We saw the receipt, right, in the affidavit, along with the K-bar knife. So we know law enforcement has a receipt for that Dickies jumpsuit. And we've also heard, but this has not been confirmed by law enforcement, that on April 2nd of 2022, that the K-bar knife was purchased by BK. So I think if they have receipts of him purchasing that knife, then I think that's, one more really strong piece of circumstantial evidence lining up with other things. I also believe that he was obsessed with one or more of the victims. And I believe it was probably Maddie, although it could have been Kaylee. In particular, we know he was liking Maddie's photographs. And according to Christy Gonzalez, he liked her photographs over and over and over. We've also heard reports that he was messaging at least one, if not two, of the victims over and over on Instagram. So I believe that he was scoping out the 1122 King Road house. And one of the reasons that he chose this house for his location, he didn't go to the University of Idaho to do it. He didn't go to the mall to do it. Was, again, it would have been an up close, intimate thing. And I think he was maybe caught off guard by the fact that Kaylee was in the room with Maddie, or Maddie was in the room with Kaylee, depending on who his target with. Because I believe that he had more things in his mind that he had planned out. I'm watching my words, and fantasized about leading up to this. And so I believe that that is the reason that the 1122 King Road house location was chosen. I also think, sadly, that images of this house had appeared on media in an effort to rent the house out, and that he would have had a very good idea of the house layout. It's also possible that he had been in the house prior, and maybe that's why Xana's father changed the locks. Maybe this is why Kaylee thought she had a stalker. Had somebody been in the house going through this? And if you think, oh, well, he wouldn't do anything like that. Well, let's go back for a second. And let me take this video down for a second. I'll put it back up in a minute, but let me pull this down and share this with you instead. Okay, can you guys see that? Nope. Let me grab it one more time and add it. There we go. Okay, so we know that he tended and befriended another young woman leading up to this. This is why. So he allegedly posted in the online forums. We're going to talk about the online forums. And he had crazy thoughts and delusions of grandeur. But he also had befriended a woman after he moved to Pullman, Washington to begin his PhD program in criminal justice at the Washington State University. Now, this woman reported that she returned to her apartment and found that someone had broken in and moved items around, but nothing was taken. Okay, sort of like what I suspect Xana may have reported to her father, which is why the locks were changed on her door. Since nothing was taken, this young woman decided not to call law enforcement, but instead she called her brand new friend, Bryan Kohberger. She asked him to come over, and BK allegedly offered to install a video security system inside her house, and the woman agreed to it. So, why would he install this? Well, law enforcement or sources are sharing that investigators believe, so that's going to be law enforcement, either FBI or the PD, local police department, or the state police. They believe that Bryan was using the security camera to spy on this young woman, that by installing this for her, he would have known her Wi-Fi passcode. He would have been able to tap into the cameras and view her comings and goings because he lived in close proximity to where her apartment is located. So if the prosecution is able to show this again shows that this was something that he was doing, that he was actively already being obsessive and stalkerish and creepy, and that this was something that he was already doing. So this is another reason why I think he was organized. If he went in and broke in just enough to scare her so that he could set up a camera, and those of you that are watching and thinking, well, why would he want to set up a camera? Because for him, it would have been a way to be dominant and feel very powerful in his life, to be able to watch her and have that power over her when she didn't know that she was being watched. And I do believe that that's why he scoped out the crime scene. I believe that's why his phone was pinging 12 times at the house at 1122 King Road leading up to the November 13th crimes. I believe he set that parking lot he sat up in that parking lot for the apartment complex that was located behind the 1122 King Road house and looked down through the windows from that vantage point. It would have looked like a goldfish bowl, and he would have been able to watch Maddie. Maddie had her pink boots and the letter M in her window, so he would have known right away. Additionally, I believe he's organized because I believe he dextered out his vehicle, and he didn't have that front plate, and I believe he planned in advance that he was going to change his vehicle tags once he returned to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. In fact, it's been reported that his sisters thought point blank, one of his sisters thought that he did it because he had the same car and he was wearing gloves and he was acting weird and he was changing out the car tags. So people have asked, well, why didn't he rent a vehicle? Why didn't he rent a vehicle? Well, if he had rented a vehicle, that would have easily been traced back to him and he wouldn't have control. And law enforcement has reported to us that they watched him meticulously cleaning his car, wearing latex gloves in the middle of the night. I don't know if his sisters knew about this, but BK knew he had this trip planned with his father. So he knew he would have a chance to change his tags. I don't think he was planning on losing the knife sheath in what happened, which was found to the side and underneath Maddie. I think when he got back out to his car and drove home and went to discard the bag, I think he looked in there and realized that his knife sheath was missing, which is why he returned at 9 a.m. the next morning. So in my opinion, he used his own vehicle. because he could control the cleaning of the vehicle and the dextering out of the vehicle. And he also knew that once he returned to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, he could change out the tag. So in my opinion, BK is a very organized perpetrator. So a disorganized criminal, well, they don't plan in advance. They use items that are already at the location rather than purchasing new ones or gathering items in advance. They don't have a plan for afterward. So a disorganized criminal is more likely to leave a lot of clues behind for law enforcement. And BK was he was studying criminal behavior. He had his master's degree in criminology. He was getting his PhD. So he would have been familiar with all kinds of different things, which made it all the more important that if he was going to commit this and be successful, then he would have to be organized. So we know that BK has reportedly had OCD, and so this would have contributed, along with his educational background in psychology and criminology, making him a very organized, very dangerous predator, in my opinion. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Or in the comment section, do you think BK was organized? Put a 1 in the chat. If you think he was disorganized, put a 2 in the chat. John Davis, hey, good to see you. He said, put that degree to good use. Yes, he did. He most certainly did. Dana said, has it been noticed? I believe Bryan was at Ted Bundy's. I don't know what a role is. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but he would have been too young to be present for that, if that's what you're asking me about. Because that occurred when he would have just been a kid. Yeah, I hope that we get that trial date. The judge, we're having another hearing on January 26th. Hopefully we'll get a trial date at that point. Jeff says, is the knife sheath found between Maddie and Kaylee, or is it just next to Maddie on the edge of the bed? The description that was given was it was underneath and to the side of Maddie. So I think it was underneath her and sticking out underneath her. So I think that the perpetrator lost it in the attack, Jeff. Good question. DM says, but Kaylee being in the same room as Maddie probably surprised him, and that's why he left the sheath. Yes, I think you're right, DM. I think that he was not expecting the girls to be in the same room. Remember, Dylan, the roommate, said that thought she heard Kaylee playing with Murphy in the dog in her room. So what if Kaylee was in her room? Maybe she couldn't sleep. They've been trying to call Jack DeCour, Kaylee's former boyfriend. And what if she was in a room up playing with the dog? She didn't want to disturb Maddie, but she didn't have sheets for her bed. So after she was done playing with the dog, she went into Maddie's room and crawled into bed next to Maddie. So when he looked in the window up from his vantage point, where I believe he was sitting up by the apartment complex parking lot, he wouldn't have seen her in the room. But by the time he got into the house and upstairs, there she was. So I think the fact that he has spied on another student, setting up cameras and going through the whole rigmarole to break into her apartment and trick her into letting him install cameras. Now, he didn't do anything with her, but again, this would have given him a really big sense of power and control. And it is really, really creepy. So DM, I think you're right. I think he was surprised to find Kaylee in the room, or Maddie and Kaylee in the room together. Jeff says number 1, that he is organized. If you think he's organized, put a 1 in the chat. If you think he's disorganized, put a 2 in. If you want to join the top chat, you just need to be subscribed for 1 minute. So yeah, Mike says, Jeff, it sounds like the lost in the blanket near King's under Maddie's head, probably around the edges. Yeah, I think that it just got lost in the struggle. I don't think he was planning on having 2 girls, and he would have thought about this. I believe, being an organized criminal, he would have thought about this, right? He would have thought about this. So he would have been thinking, oh, well, as an organized criminal, he would have had pictures in his mind of how he thought it was going to go and what he was going to do. I'm watching my words when he got in there. And I believe that it would have been a surprise to find the 2 girls in the room together. So that's a great question. It's hard to figure, why would she leave the dog alone in a room to sleep with Maddie? Who knows? Yeah, it could be she just heard something. We also have heard reports that Kaylee said there's someone here. So was she warning Maddie, and did she go back into the room to see what was going on, and then he came in? We don't know. And Tiffany thinks it was organized. Mama Bear says it was organized but went wrong. Yes, it went very, very wrong. Steffi Santa says prepared, full of rage and adrenaline. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. So let's go through a couple of other things. I have a lot of packages to share with you guys tonight. So we talked about organized and disorganized, and now we're going to consider pre and post offense behaviors. So because we believe that BK was an organized perpetrator, and we believe that he did survey the victims, and we believe that that's why his phone was pinging at the 1122 King Road house 12 times leading up to the crimes. We believe he possibly was in the house before, and he could have absolutely looked at the house online in the photos that were online. In the post offense behaviors, I'm curious to know if BK continued his love of long drives that Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, has put forward as his alibi, or if these long drives stopped after November 13th of 2022. What do you think the prosecution is going to be able to tell us about this? Because if the long drives continued and he was still going to the 1122 King Road house, he could have just been reliving it. But if he was, did he go other places? Were there other long drives that he loved to go on? When he went to Albrightsville with his car, Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, did he take long drives there? So I think that the prosecution's going to also be considering and ask the jury to consider his post offense behaviors. And if you think BK's love of long drives continued after November 13th, put an A in the chat. If you think that he stopped going on long drives after November 13th of 2022, put a B in the chat. I just want to do an informal poll. I'm curious. So we know that BK had this road trip planned with his dad, Michael. He knew that he was going to be leaving town shortly after these crimes were committed. He knew he would have an opportunity to change the tags on his vehicle once he was in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. And this is exactly what he did. We know this because law enforcement was surveilling him and watched BK in the middle of the night as he meticulously cleaned his Hyundai Elantra multiple times after what happened on November 13th. They also observed him sorting out his personal trash from his parents' trash and placing his own personal trash into neighbors' garbage cans, again wearing these latex gloves. Now, he would have known he lost that knife sheath, and he was a criminology major, so he would have known that his DNA could potentially have been on that knife sheath. And he was pulled over twice by law enforcement while driving with his dad from Pullman, Washington, back to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. So I think BK would have known that potentially he was a suspect. And that is why, in my opinion, he told the police officer on the body cam footage when the law enforcement officer asked he and his dad where they were going. His dad said they were going for Thai food. No, BK said they were going for Thai food. And in contrast, his dad, Michael, who had nothing to hide, told law enforcement they were driving to Pennsylvania. So why was BK misleading law enforcement that they were going for Thai food? His dad had to think that was odd. The other thing that was so odd that I just keep going back to is that 9-hour detour. I can see taking a 1 hour or 2 hour detour for weather, but a 9-hour detour is weird. So we know BK also wore gloves inside his parents' home. A lot of people have attributed this to OCD, and I think it is, but I think it's more than just that. I think that this is why law enforcement really could not find his DNA in the garbage. They were trying to probably get his DNA out of the garbage, but BK would have known about what's called discarded DNA. And discarded DNA means that law enforcement can use the DNA that that on anything that you throw away or anything you leave behind, they can't compel you to do a sample without a court order, but they can use what's called discarded. But they actually had to use his father's DNA to match to him. And that's when they arrested him then, but they're not using that DNA in court. Then they got a court order because BK apparently didn't want to give up his DNA to exonerate himself. And they got a cheek swab. And that's how they ended up doing the 1 in octillion match to that DNA on the knife sheath is from the cheek swab. Now, Ann Taylor wants to get rid of the garbage trash DNA for the father because that's a lot easier of an argument. But I don't think the judge is going to let her just toss that out. Let me catch up with chat for a second and grab a sip of water here real quick. Let's see what you guys thought. I'm seeing a lot of bees. This is really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. Oh, Jeff is just clarifying. I meant Maddie. Yeah, I think they both probably were. I would think that because all of these young people were out, it was a party night. I would think that, they all may have had something to drink. I think that's very likely. I know a lot has been made about Dylan, the roommate, having frozen shock phase, and that couldn't last 8 hours. But I don't think it did. I think she just froze because she says she locked the door. I think she was startled. I think she froze and she thought one of her neighbors had a boyfriend over, or a male friend, just a friend that happened to be male. And she was probably irritated and a little bit, worried. She didn't like having a strange man in the house. But we know from all the party videos that we've seen that this is not the only time. But I do think that going back to this installation of cameras to this young woman's apartment near BK, and the fact that somebody broke in and then she called him to help install cameras, and then he went over and did it. I wonder if law enforcement also has proof that he was watching her. Mike says, it's funny they want to create an alibi through the cross-examination of witnesses. Too weird. Daphne says he never would have left the knife sheath. Oh, I don't think he intentionally left it unless he was thinking he was going to leave it for a calling card. But after learning where and how it was placed, I agree. I don't think he would have left it, Daphne. I think he dropped it. I think it got knocked out of his hands in the struggle. And Jeff says, I bet if law enforcement were following him in Indiana, they really did stop for Thai food. I bet BK would have let them know Thai food trash for them to examine. Well, I'm sure they were following. I'm 50-50 on the sheath. I thought maybe it was clean until it fell maybe from his pocket. I find it so hard to believe he lost it and didn't notice. Well, I think that when we learn more about what the crime scene looked like, I think it will be more reasonable to know how he lost this, right? Hey, Jody. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you too, Mama Bierman. Lynette says, I don't believe anything about the 8 hour. Yeah, I think that the problem, and I agree with you, Lynette, so much is because of this gag order. I feel so bad for the roommates, especially Dylan, because they put this thing about the frozen shock phase in the affidavit. I'm sure law enforcement did not intend to throw her under the bus, but because this gag order was put in place right after that, I feel like she just got, such a bad dealing of the cards there, and that she wasn't able to talk about it to anybody. And she's, stuck to that gag order. And Jeff says, I wonder if the roommates had noise canceling headphones, kind of necessary, and maybe, or earplugs. People are wondering, well, why did she hear the dog playing upstairs but not hear what happened in Xana's room? And well, we don't know how sound traveled in the house because there was an addition put onto the second and third story of the house. So we don't know how sound traveled, but we also don't know if she stuck earplugs in. We don't know if she'd had a few drinks. We just don't know. Also, if you think about a knife, if he practiced, he would have known where to go with it. And you can make someone very quiet. I'm watching my words here, by the way that you use it. And LJD3 says, I'm interested in what the digital forensics will show. Long time to wait. I am too. All right. So I've got some more stuff to dig into. So I want to talk a little bit about the fact that, we haven't seen any crime scene photos. We haven't heard the 911 call. We haven't had access to any of the coroner reports. We don't know the order even for sure. We don't know if one victim was done away with in a different way than the other victims yet. There's still a lot of information we don't know. But law enforcement, they will be sifting and would have been sifting through all of this evidence. So would the prosecution and the defense. And I think that they would be able to make a pretty decent determination as to what they believe happened on November 13th. And I think that this gave them some clues as to who did this and why. And again, we want to look at the why, because if we can understand that, we want to know why, and why did the perpetrator make these particular choices. So organized criminals are often are according to the classification scheme, they're either antisocial, which could be psychopathic, but they do know right from wrong. They're not insane, but they don't have any remorse for what they did. So that brings us to the New York Times visual snow. Let me grab this for you guys. Okay. Can you guys see that? Okay, so the New York Times reported that BK had allegedly posted on the online message board, I did video about this as well, devoted to a condition called visual snow syndrome. Now, this is a disorder that causes someone to see static. Now, this can just be the peripheral, and the peripheral can be the sides of your eyes, or even the back sides or the front sides. So it can be different places. But between November 6th of 2009 and February of 2012, when BK was a teenager, he made allegedly 118 posts on this forum, and his username was XR. So let's go through a little bit of this and what he had to say, and how this would fit in my opinion, to the profile that law enforcement would be building for the person who did this. So on January 11th, he allegedly wrote, "I have visual snow since September 21st of 2009. Since then, I've changed mainly from anxiety and a sense of derealization and hopelessness." So derealization is when somebody feels like something isn't real. Something's not real. So I'm wondering, did he feel like there was also a depersonalization? And was this some of the signs that, were leading to a budding psycho? So in April of 2011, in a thread by another user about the possible benefits of visual snow, BK wrote, quote, "I have become very deep and determined on goals. It made me smarter." So we can see a little bit of grandiosity here. We can see a little bit of we've heard reports that he's been reported as being arrogant, kind of a know-it-all. He liked to nitpick the teachers in class to show that he knew more. He was the type of person, he's been described as explaining things to the point, just to show that he knew more than the other person. He would explain things in the most complicated fashion. We've heard reports about that. But here he wrote in May of 2011 that he has depression, no interest in activity, constant thoughts of the S word, crazy thoughts, delusions of grandeur, anxiety, poor self-image, poor social skills. And this is the most telling. This right here. No emotion. To me, tell me what you think. Do you think the fact that he is telling us as a teenager that he had no emotion, do you think that this is signs that we may have had somebody who was a budding sociopath on a public forum? We also had him describe himself as a sack of meat. And And then he also said this post concluded with, "When I get home, I'm mean to my family. This started when visual snow did. I felt no emotion, and along with depersonalization, and I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse." So no emotion, and I can say and do what I want with little remorse. Now, think about the visual snow, and then think about how that is known to coexist with night vision issues. And this may explain why he didn't realize he dropped the knife sheath. It may also explain why he did not see Dylan peeking out of her bedroom door. It could also be because she froze for a second. She froze for a couple of seconds and just froze still, and that may have saved her life. And that is a very common response to being startled. So he also wrote, "I had this horrible depersonalization go on in my life for almost 2 years. I often find myself making simple human interactions, but it's as if I'm playing a role playing game. As I hug my family, I look into their faces, I see nothing. It is like I'm looking at a video game, but less. I'm blank. I have no opinion. I have no emotion. I have nothing." So this feeling of no emotion and no remorse, that would be the type of personality that would do something like this, that would be able to go into a bedroom of four beautiful, innocent young people, go into the house with four beautiful, innocent young people, climb up to the third floor bedroom, do away with sweet Maddie and Kaylee, who didn't even know he was alive, probably. Um, it would have allowed him to do that because that's how sociopaths feel. Let's go through his last post. So his last post was on February 20th of 2012. And the post said, "I've just accepted my visuals. No, finally, I don't even feel the need to stay away from the forum. It doesn't scare me anymore. Anyone else come to terms? I feel like coming to terms could be a bad thing, though." So I believe these will also be brought in along with any other ratings they can find. I do not believe that BK had any type of mental illness. I think, and I don't even know if he had visual snow or if he was just attributing these feelings of having no remorse, feeling like a sack of meat, viewing other people as sacks of meat. If that is the kind of personality that would allow somebody to cold-bloodedly go in and do that. Let me catch up on the chat, and then we're going to dig into some more stuff in just a second. Let me grab this.
See how Kohberger was.
So, what do you guys think? Jody says it came out in the Vallow trial, so I'm sure a lot came out during the Lori Vallow trial, so I'm sure we're all going to be shocked. Yeah, I think you're right. Red Metal says BK was doing things to alleviate his visual snow, like the whole no meat diet. Yes, you're right. And a lot of people have tried to attribute that to something more sinister. Cannibal has been thrown out there. I don't believe that. I think that it was his way of treating his visual snow. Now, I don't know if he ever got any medical help for the visual snow, or if for sure he had that, or if he was attributing these feelings of not being able to connect to other human beings to his visual snow. Jeff says BK almost sounds like a Marvel Comics villain that set out to be a super police detective, but went off course. Yeah, we know that leading up to this, he applied to work at the police department, but I think they would have been able to see that he had an arrest. He was arrested as an adult, and although his record was expunged, I believe a law enforcement would have still been able to view that. So maybe the university that hired him as a teaching assistant couldn't have seen that, the Washington State University, but certainly a police force would be able to see that he had stolen his sister's cell phone and he had been arrested for that. Most people do not get arrested for their very first offense. So Yeah, I'm wondering if he, was thinking about this for a long time. We know he had that study, Mike, that where he, put forward onto Reddit a study, and this would have been completely normal under the guise of a criminology, and most people who study criminology are interested in stopping criminals, and most people who study psychology are interested in helping other people, but there are a small percentage of people who are attracted to criminology because they are criminals. They're trying to figure out themselves. They're attracted to psychology because they feel like there's something wrong with them. And I think going through those posts that he made on Visual Snow is really helpful with that. Jody says it seems to describe someone that could do this. Yes, it certainly does. Mike says, yes, he was fixated on escaping at the moment after getting Ethan and Xana. Dylan is lucky she didn't confront him. She's so lucky she froze. And that's, one of the different ways that nature does protect us, isn't it? Jody says, I think he has disassociation. Mama Bear says, I would be surprised if Buddy was his first. I think it probably started years ago. Well, it makes me wonder what was going on too, because Mama Bear, because both of his sisters both became mental health professionals. They both have mental health licenses. So what was going on in their household that made all three siblings, Bryan and his two sisters, all get degrees in mental health? Bryan had a degree in psychology, and then went on to get his master's in criminology. It makes me wonder what was going on in that household. Was he already not connecting with, things going off the rails? What do you guys think? Mike says, yeah, he doesn't care. I don't think he even cares about being caught. I do think he cares about that. And the reason I do think he doesn't care about other people, I do agree with that. I do think he did care about being caught. And I think it's because of all the cleaning and the glove wearing and sorting his trash separate from his parents and putting it into neighbors' trash cans. Why would you separate your own garbage from your parents' household garbage and go and put that into neighbors' trash can? I think he was concerned that, law enforcement, because he had been pulled over twice, might be onto him. If he did Buddy, we're watching our words here, why would police say it's not related? Well, they said this before they got him, that they didn't think it was related, and maybe it's not. But I just find it hard to believe that on October 21st, which is the same day that he got that really blistering email from his professor telling him that he had failed. I think he would have been really, really angry. So I think it's possible maybe they can't prove it, so they're just going to leave it. He probably self-diagnosed because he knew it all. Yeah, he thought he was really smart. He thought he was the smartest person in the room. I wonder if BK's research questions project was all about him, or if they were the creation of the two professors on the project. Maybe they handed it off. That is very possible. I think we'll find out more about that during the trial, if that's brought in at all. Jody says, just like if you're interested in cooking, you're going to study that. Exactly. If you love cooking, you're going to study cooking. You're going to watch videos on cooking. If you're interested in criminals' behavior, you're going to study criminology. So, but let's dig into some more. Let me take one more comment, and then I'll take two more questions, and then I'm going to jump back into the presentation that I have for you guys today. Jeff says, maybe Bryan hoped that the subject of one of Catherine Ramlin's next books he would be. I don't know. Now, for those of you that don't know, Professor Ramlin did write a book on Dennis Rader, who is the BTK criminal. So it could very well be that, he did study under her. So I think that's interesting. So let's go on. I have another package to share with you. Let me take this one down. Let me grab this one. Okay. I gotta grab it. Okay. Oh, I just grabbed the wrong one. Okay, my mistake. Let me grab this other one. Hang on. Sorry about that, guys. I was trying to be so careful. I had a bunch lined up. We're going to. So I think that Ann Taylor did have to put him in the car. I don't think she had any choice on that. And just to catch you guys up a little bit, so besides the installing a video security system inside this young woman's house, so we're also hearing now that Bryan Kohberger's defense team, led by Ann Taylor, is asking Judge John Judge for a third time to reconsider his denial of their efforts to have the indictment against BK dismissed. I respect Ann Taylor, and I think she's a very good defense attorney. But I think asking to have the grand jury indictment thrown out over and over and over is somewhat going to be insulting to the grand jury. People, I mean, they sat on the jury. They gave up their time to come to this. They sifted through all the evidence. But of course, she wants it thrown out. It delays, creates more of a delay. Now, if this was thrown out, which I do not think, I'm going to just put a prediction here. I think there's a 99% chance that the judge is not going to throw the indictment out because he's already denied it again. But she has nothing else to say. And maybe BK is asking her to repeatedly ask to have the indictment. So while the defense is delaying and trying to have the indictment thrown out, the prosecutors are focusing on speeding up the trial for BK. I do want to touch on one thing. When BK first got arrested, do you remember hearing the reports that he had asked if anybody else had been arrested? And I think this is a really odd thing because normally if you were arrested, you might feel angry, right? If you didn't do it, you wouldn't be asked if anybody else was arrested also. You would be asking, you would be mad, right? You would be, why, I can't believe you guys are bothering me. I can't believe you guys think I did this. You would be annoyed. You would be incensed if you didn't do it. And I think that statement is very telling. I think it was a calculated statement. And when you look at BK's eyes, we've heard from the people that worked at Severin Sirens, and you look at his eyes and the tension that he carries in his mouth, he does, in my opinion, have kind of a ghoulish look to him. He just does look creepy. His eyes look predatory in my opinion. And I think that you do have to trust your gut. Wow, Jeff, you made my day. I think your theories are brilliant. And not just because they align with all of mine, but when pro BK YouTubers make it make sense, they really just need to listen to your live stream. Well, thank you. I think that some people, no matter what we show them, no matter what they see at the trial, they're never going to believe the truth. They love the conspiracy theories. They wanted to believe there were tunnels under the house. And then when the house got torn down and there were no tunnels, that kind of ended that. Mike says, I'm half expecting the girls maybe rejected him. Who knows? The trial may have that info. He tried talking to them and they rejected it. Well, we know that he was DMing them on Instagram, right? They know. Oh, please give this a thumbs up, you guys. Just seeing the thumbs up they remind me. We know he was DMing at least one or more of the victims on Instagram, right? We know that from the Gonzalez and also from sources who have gone to credible media outlets. So we've heard this from two different sources that he was DMing at least one of the victims on Instagram. Sorry. And so I do think it's really interesting. So, yeah, I think you're right, Tara. There's no way this is going to be thrown out. Red Meadow said, honestly, though, would be better if he was staying at home sleeping, would be better of an alibi, at least if he's the one who's telling the truth. Oh, let me scroll back. And the two may be able to find footage of him somewhere. Yeah, I think that Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, had to put him in the car, Red Metal, because I think sleeping at home would definitely be a better alibi than putting him in the car. But I think she had to put him in the are. She had to put him in the car because law enforcement has picked up videos, every bit of videotape they have. So they either have him in the car driving, or they have video footage of something that identifies him driving that car. Yeah, I think that, I mean, we know he was messaging one or more of the victims, we believe, on Instagram. So that would have, the fact that they weren't answering him may have felt like a rejection to him. If you don't, yeah, you don't go on saying, has anyone else been arrested? You would be shocked about being arrested if you are innocent. I think so. I think that if you're innocent, you wouldn't be saying, has anybody else been arrested also? So I think that's interesting that was his take on it. And to me, it was, immediately just trying to find out what else law enforcement knew. Was he their number one suspect? Had they found the knife sheath? Was there DNA on the knife sheath? All these things had to be running through his head. DM says, I don't know if his question about the other arrests was verified. I believe it was. Angela says, they sifted through the evidence created by the prosecution. That's why she's asking again that there is irrelevant information that isn't true, like DMs, Payne, Blaker contradicting statements. Well, I'm sure that's what the defense is going to say, Angela, but I don't think that there's any chance at all that this grand jury indictment is going to be thrown out. They can keep asking and they can keep trying to delay it, but I don't think there's any chance. Thank you, Jetta. I really appreciate your kindness. If you guys are liking this coverage and you feel like it's interesting and helpful, feel free to please subscribe. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Give this video a thumbs up and help me out with the algorithm. I do a lot of research before I go live. Just as I'm told that when the Idaho suspect Kohberger was in custody, he asked if anyone else was arrested. I'm told he had a quiet, blank stare. Yeah, and he's talked about in these posts, which is why I thought it was so interesting to go back to those visual snow posts and just kind of line that up with everything else that we've learned about him and learned about this case in trying to figure out not just why, but why the 1122 King Road house, which we talked about in today's video. Not just why, but why pick that location? Why not go to the University of Idaho? Why not go to the library? Why did he go to that home? I feel like we've addressed a lot of that in the video. If you're joining us late, you're welcome to back it up and go through that. Angela said there was no connection that would include social media. Yes, there was. Mike said, if you haven't seen my videos showing that he was DMing the victims on social media, I have provided a lot of information on that. You're welcome to go back through my playlist of Bryan Kohberger videos and look it up for yourself, or you can do a simple Google search. But yep, there was absolutely connections between himself and the victims. We also know that an ID was found inside a glove, inside a box that belonged to one of the victims. So multiple connections to the victims. We also know that he reportedly had victims of at least one of the victims on his cell phone when he was arrested. So let's go through the connections. Following the girls on Instagram, Kaylee and Maddie, liking Maddie's posts, messaging the girls on social media. We don't know which two girls, but girls is plural, so more than one. We know that he had one of the victims' IDs inside a glove, inside a box. That's another connection. So multiple connections to the victim. We also know that he had pictures of at least one of the victims on his cell phone. We also know that his cell phone was pinging around the 1122 King Road house, and that his car was picked up on video camera, circling not once, not twice, not but 3 times, and parking to the 1122 King Road house before taking off just after. So for those of you guys that are saying he doesn't have connections, I don't know what to tell you. You just need to catch up on the case so that you can be in the know and have all of the information. Jenna says it's an admission that he was in, I'm not sure, in CAT that night. I'm not sure what that means. Jody says, thank you so much for joining the chat. I work really hard putting these lives and videos together. I do try to go back through multiple things. And Tara says she has been making so many different alibis for him. She's become a joke. You're talking about the defense attorney, Ann Taylor. I do think it's got to be somewhat. I mean, she had to put him in the car. That's my opinion, because you're right. I can't remember who posted that it would have been better for him to be sleeping at home. Well, yeah, but I think she had to put him in the car. And I think we're going to find out that she had to put him on the car because law enforcement has that car driving on camera. It will be something that definitively shows that it's his car, either him in the car driving it or a license plate that proves it's his car circling that house. And they're going to line up that car with those cell phone pings. So those of you that are like, oh, it's not proven the cell phone pings could ping 50 feet away. Yep. But they're going to line it up with that vehicle on different cameras. Every camera they can grab, they're going to be lining up those cell phone pings and show the jury that it is that vehicle, in my opinion. TM says they have him on camera, and then Ann Taylor needed to place him in the car. Exactly. Jeff says, I checked Linda Lane footage from 1 a.m. to 4:22 a.m. The only cars in motion are seen are the 5 Elantra passes and 2 other cars. Any car going through the dead end area in 30 minutes is very suspicious. Right. And that Elantra did a 3-point turn to turn around to try to park. So thanks for that, Jeff. I appreciate it. Mike said there are several videos. They will match his phone. They had to place him in the car because he's going to claim he was driving. It was just a coincidence. Right. They couldn't even say, because I think this would be the next defense would be somebody stole his cell phone. So it wasn't really his cell phone pinging in the area. Right. That would be like another defense they could use. But I think but they are not using that one. And I think they had to put him in the car. And Jeff says that you meant to say that the car going through the dead end area, the final pass was driving. Yeah, it was the last pass was that driving away from the crime scene. Absolutely. Patrick says, anything creators say about this case is speculation and proving, including the creators you watch. Well, and in my opinion, there's some that's just random speculation. And then there's some that I feel like is like researched information. And I've tried to base everything that I'm sharing with you and show you why I believe this to be true, not just, me just filling that 8-hour time gap with whatever I want to fill it with, attributing everything to these roommates who haven't been charged with anything. And it's so ironic. That people come into my comment section, and I'm sure you guys have seen this in other people's comment sections too, and they talk about how BK is innocent until proven guilty, which is true. It's absolutely true. But they don't give that same grace to the roommates, Dylan and Bethany, who have been charged with nothing. These 2 girls haven't been charged with anything. They haven't been charged with anything. And they're not given the same grace. Jenna says, you would think it's a jealous wife or girlfriend. Either way, all of the hate and rage seen in the wounds. Yes, I think that's the thing we don't know is, we're going to find out how certain victims were done away with. And I think it's going to give us more information about why the crimes were committed, the way they were committed, why we didn't hear anybody scream. Well, there's using a knife, there's ways you can do things. I'm being very, very careful. Oh, welcome. Jeff just became a new member. Oh, wow, Jeff. Let me see if I can grab it. It's okay. So Jeff just became a channel member. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate that. Welcome to Reporter Room. We're really happy to have you as a new channel member. All right. Angel is still saying she's all in this case, but she does not believe hearsay. Well, that's fine. If you don't want to have a discussion on the case, maybe you shouldn't be in the top chat, Angel. I don't know what to tell you. We're going to talk about the case, and we're going to talk about the case in terms of BK. And then the other argument, I love this one too. Ann Taylor would lose her job if she lied, and she specifically said no connection. Sure, because lawyers never lie. When Jose Baez got up and the Casey Anthony case and said that George did it, not Casey Anthony, he may have believed it, but it doesn't mean it's true. So there's a fine line. So would she have lied if she specifically said no connection? Well, I think that she would be able to say that if she hadn't looked through everything at the time of saying it. So she's walking a fine line, in my opinion. But I love that you brought that up, Angel, because I definitely think that attorneys all the time get up. And we heard this also in the Scott Peterson case. Mark Garagos stood up in the opening arguments in front of the judge and jury and said he was going to prove that Lacey was out walking the dog. He had witnesses. He never called any of those witnesses. Not one of them. Not one of them. So saying that Ann Taylor would lose her job, no, it's hard to prove that she's knowingly lying. Joe D has also joined as a channel member. Welcome, Joe D. I'm just trying to find you guys here. Joe D Jackson also joined as a channel member. Thank you so much, Jeff and Joe D, for joining. Being a channel member is great. I'm just so happy to have you guys. Let's go through some more comments. As you guys, I'm like behind on the chat. I want to catch up. But even if you don't agree with me, your comments still make for an interesting chat. So all opinions are welcome. I like to hear them because I like to address them and talk about them. Loaded Hot says, it's known that he had some IDs in a glove in a box, but it's never been stated they were the IDs of one of the victims. Well, it has. Let me see if I can grab that for you. Let me grab it. All right. Let me share this. Take this down for a second and bring this one up. Okay. So I'm not just going off of just general speculation. I'm using good sources. So this was discovered by investigators during a search of BK's parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. So court documents also state that the investigators have linked him to the crime scene with the DNA left on the knife sheath. And a search warrant unsealed earlier this year previously revealed that the police seized IDs from Bryan Kohberger's car. They didn't specify who they belonged to. But the ID claim was made by Chris Cuomo on News Nation and Jennifer Coffendaffer, who's a former FBI agent. So she says about it, just like the sheath, it's found next to Maddie with his DNA on that clasp. It's the same thing. Why would he have an ID related to one of the people from that house? And for those of you that are saying, oh, but he would never believed he would never come forward and say that he had an ID belonging to law enforcement would never leak to the press. That's exactly how they circumvent a gag order. They do leak it. So what I try to do is I try to bring you information based in stuff that's been vetted, because whoever put that forward is going to have vetted out the information. They're going to know the law enforcement person they're going to be talking about. They're not going to be just picking that up out of a Reddit chat room. So I hope that answers your question loaded hot. So that is, law enforcement came forward to journalists, and this is really common for journalists to keep their sources to themselves. And there were IDs belonging to one of the victims in a glove inside a box inside his Brightsville, Pennsylvania home. And that's such a random, weird thing to say. It's why I believe that it is true. May says, I think Bryan has a huge advantage now that the house is gone. I don't know. I hope not. I think the families are worried about that too. Maybe that somehow he's going to get off. I hope not. Jeff says, I think BK passes by Linda Lane Cam for a final time at 4:07:30 a.m., heading toward the back of the 1122 King Road house. Xana's last sign of life is 4:12 a.m. Car trunk can be heard 4:22:01 a.m. and the car speeds off at 4:21:19 a.m. So yeah, and I think that I've talked to you about this, you guys, about this before. I think that people have said that what Bethany and Dylan both saw couldn't have been the same thing, because Dylan described seeing a man who was athletic but not muscular, which does describe BK, wearing all black and a mask with bushy eyebrows, which I know they trimmed his eyebrows, but when he did have bushier eyebrows. Those are not like really thin looking eyebrows to me. I think that she did see that man. And then Bethany reportedly saw someone exiting the house without anything on. And I believe that they both saw the same man. I think that this perpetrator stripped everything down. I think that he dropped everything into a plastic garbage bag and carried it out to his vehicle. The car was dextered out with plastic and then drove off. So yeah, I think this was very, very well planned out. Remember, this was a criminology major who would have understood how crime scenes are investigated. He would have understood DNA very, very well, and he would have planned this out meticulously. Mike says he circled the house a few times and then parks in the back for 14 minutes and then it's back on camera speeding away. Right. And people who have said that they didn't think that he could do it in 14 minutes, I would urge you to watch the gray hues. He shows on camera. He does such a good job. He shows on camera how much time there was, that there was plenty of time for him to do all of this. He proves it. It's a really good video. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. Patrick Larry says, an attorney only has to say what they believe to be true. That's exactly right. Thank you, Patrick. That's how they get around lying. Anything Ann Taylor says is propaganda. So I think she was using the motions to get her point out, to get her side out, to get her point of view out. But all she has to do is say, well, I believed it to be true. Just like Mark Garagos standing up and saying he was going to put on witnesses that placed Lacey walking that dog after Scott Peterson was long gone from the house. He didn't do it. Jose Baez claiming that George did it and not Casey Anthony, and Casey was found not guilty. It worked. But I think there's going to be a lot. DM says, Jessica, it will look like a movie with all of the evidence at trial. Yeah, there's so much we haven't seen. We haven't seen so much. We haven't heard the 911 calls. We haven't seen any of the medical coroner reports. We haven't seen anything. We don't even know the order yet. There's so much we still don't know. Angel's still in the chat. So why haven't they handed it over to the defense if they have so much? Oh, I think they have handed over everything to the defense. And the defense teams is trying everything they can do to get it thrown out. So they are trying to get that's why they want the grand jury indictment to thrown out. That's why they want the DNA that was collected from the trash to be used and argued in court versus the cheek swab that was a court ordered cheek swab. They would rather argue that. So I think that they're doing a lot of everything that they can to get it thrown out. I think Ann Taylor is put a third time requesting that the indictment be thrown out. So she's just being relentless with it. I think she's going to end up irritating the judge. That's just my opinion. If I were a judge and I kept getting motions of something that I'd already ruled on, I would start to become annoyed. But maybe her client is asking her to do this. And I talked earlier about that. I thought that one of the defenses that Ann Taylor could have used if she wouldn't have had to put him in the car was the report of a stolen cell phone, that BK has gotten a stolen cell phone. Or if you're talking about the one that he stole from his sister, I can pull that up for you really quick. Yeah, Bryan Kohberger was arrested as an adult for stealing his sister's cell phone. Back in 2014, let me just share this with you guys. 1 second. Just need to take this down. Okay, and add this one in. Okay. So this is from ABC News, and I'm using a variety of different news sources. So records show that he was first arrested in 2014. So 9 years before he was accused of doing away with the Maddie, Ethan, Xana, and Kaylee, he was arrested in his native Pennsylvania, charged with a misdemeanor theft for allegedly stealing his sister's iPhone, according to records reviewed by ABC News. It was BK's father, Michael, who reported the incident to police, according to court records. Now, we know he had medication issues. We know that he allegedly went and sold it. I'm going to assume this wasn't his first time. Most people don't get arrested on their first time. I'm going to assume that the father was exasperated and just, called police. He was just frustrated. So according to the records, Michael Kohberger, that's BK's dad, told law enforcement that Bryan had warned him, the father, quote, not to do anything stupid after he learned his son had taken the phone, adding that his son had struggled with medication addiction. I'm watching my words. BK's earlier run-in with the law, as described in these records, is only now coming to light as he prepares to defend himself against the charges. So he was 19 years old. He wasn't a young kid. He was 19. He was an adult. And this is why I think he did not get the job with law enforcement. Kohberger tried. He didn't get the job with law enforcement because they would have been able to see this. So I hope I've answered your question about the stolen cell phone, DM. Mike says, what isn't handed over? Yeah, they have everything. May says, nobody knows except Bryan. We wouldn't convict a man for a few phone pings with a sheath with his dad's DNA. The sheath doesn't have his dad's DNA. Let me clear that up. Because okay, let's go through the DNA. I'll very quickly explain it. There were two DNA. The first, they used his dad's DNA to catch BK, to catch Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger was sorting through the trash, wearing gloves, pulling his trash separate from his dad's trash, and putting his own personal trash into his neighbor's garbage can. So they wanted to find out. They had the knife sheath. They knew they had DNA on it. So they wanted to find out if this DNA was a match. They couldn't get BK's DNA out of the trash. So they were able to identify that the trash matched the father or grandfather of whoever did this. And that's how the trash DNA was used. But that's not what that's not the octillion, 1 in octillion, which is a million is 1, billion is 2, octillion is 8. So that's almost more chances than there are people on the planet that BK is the perpetrator of this. So they got a court order once they arrested him with a cheek swab And that is the DNA that's being used at trial. Now, Anne would much rather talk about BK and his dad's DNA and the trash. That's what she wants you guys to focus on. That's what she's arguing about. That's what all her emotions are. It's a big distraction, in my opinion. She's doing it very well because she's managed to confuse some people. I'm sure she's going to try to confuse the jury. I think the jury's going to be smarter than that. But that's not even being brought into court. How the DNA that was matched to his dad is not even being used in the trial. The DNA that's being used in the trial is the cheek swab that they got directly from Bryan Kohberger that was matched directly to the DNA on the knife sheath. Now I'm getting Jeff became a member. I got notified and then I didn't have a way to show it. I guess I'm really behind on the chat, you guys. Sorry about that. So I hope I answered your question on that, May. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it. And then Jody also became a YouTube member. Yay. Thanks, you guys. Yeah, being a channel member is just a great way you can support the channel. It's also a nice way that we can connect too. I do love connecting with channel members. So I hope that answered your question, May. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Mike says, alleged one ID belongs to someone who lived there. We don't know which person. Well, we know it was his father. The DNA was back to a father or grandfather. Well, we know a grandfather wasn't living in the house, so we know it was Michael Kohberger. But that's not the DNA that's going to be used in court to try to convict Bryan Kohberger. The DNA that they're using in court is going to be that cheek swab that he did not volunteer to exonerate himself. Lots of other people went to law enforcement and gave their DNA so they could be ruled out. I bet Jack DeCour ruled himself out giving a DNA sample. I bet Jason, the neighbor that came forward initially, ruled himself out using DNA. BK, they had to get a court order to get his cheek swab. So I think that's, very interesting also. Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear both sides as well. And it's good to hear the questions and the things that you guys are thinking about too. Jody says, I'll wait until the guilty verdict, just like I did with Lori Vallow. Y'all know, when you know, you know. Yeah, I think, and we saw this in the Alex Murdaugh trial too. I'm going to stream this trial because I'm definitely going to be watching. If you want to watch it together as a community, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're going to watch this together. I'm going to sit here. We're going to talk about stuff. And we're going to watch this trial together. And I want to be tuned into what you guys are thinking while you're watching it. I want to get your feedback in real time as to what the prosecution and the defense are both showing and telling us. Please give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. And consider sharing it on social media. Okay, so Mike says, Sunbear, he's talking to May. The GGI tool used to find them, Bryan hid in the trash. They got his dad's, which was a 99% match, meaning that the person who did this, I'm watching my words, was the son. Right. But that's not the DNA that they're going to use in court. The DNA they're going to use in court is a cheek swab that they got once they arrested BK. Once they had him in custody, they had to get a court order to get a cheek swab. They took the cheek swab. And that's what will be presented to the jury. But Ann Taylor doesn't want to talk about that. She wants us all to be talking about the DNA that led them to believe that it was, that they had the right guy, that led him to the father or grandfather of the perpetrator who did this. She wants to talk about that because that's easier to argue, right? 1 in octillion is pretty tough to argue. Loaded Hot says, I think BK is guilty. We only know what law enforcement has released. Yeah, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's so much we don't know. There's so much. This is correct. If you, or the diaphragm or the neck area, that would be a way to make it very quiet. And I believe that he practiced. I believe that he practiced. May says, okay, I remember the link. It was linked to his dad. Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I love that you guys are bringing me all this. It does really help get a good conversation going because a lot of times I'm rolling around in my own head in my own little thought bubble. about all of this, sifting through news articles, sifting through old social media reports on him, and then going back and looking at how, as an investigative journalist, and I know people are like, multiple people call themselves journalists. I really am one. I'm legacy verified on Twitter, which means I was verified before you could buy a blue check mark as a journalist on Twitter. I'm also verified on Spoutable and on Facebook. So I really am a journalist. I'm not just saying that because I know some people do say that, but I really am a journalist, and I had to prove it. And Angel says, I'm by no means a BK lover. I'm just going from factual court docs, nothing from News Nation. And you don't have to just go through News Nation. There's lots of other sources, which is why I've showed you ABC, NBC. I mean, multiple sources reporting out the same information that I'm sharing with you. So I am sharing. I do just give the disclaimer that everything I'm sharing is my opinion, but I'm doing my opinion based on research. It's not just me filling in an 8-hour time gap with theories that I saw a TikToker get good traction on, and now I'm going to copy the TikToker and make a video about it here on YouTube. Like the tunnels under the house, I don't know where that originated from, but we've seen the house torn down. There were no tunnels under the house. I don't know who put that out. Don't even tell me. I don't even want to know. But obviously that wasn't true. I didn't make a video on that. I chose not to make a video on that, even though I know I could have gotten good views and good clicks off of it, because I believe you guys deserve truth and integrity. And that's what I try to bring you guys in my reporting here on YouTube. I try to bring you integrity and truth, not just weird theories that are not based in. I do theories, but they're based in fact. Could be his IDs. Well, my understanding is that it's belonged, from looking at the ABC article and multiple other sources that have reported this out, that it was one of the victims. So, make of that what you will. We'll find out at the trial if I'm right or if I'm wrong. They don't usually swear at the attorneys. They don't swear in the attorney. No, they don't. But they are expected to tell the truth. But this doesn't mean this whole thing of that she can't tell a lie. My point about this Loaded Hot is you don't have to just take Chris Cuomo and Jennifer Coffindeffer. I just showed you ABC News with the same information. So, I've heard people, I don't believe the news, that's fine. I'm going to believe the news. Let me put it that way, because I know they were at least going to vet the source of where they got it from. They're going to at least know if somebody comes forward and says, I used to have a child that attended WSU, Washington State University. I used to have a kid that went there. They're going to ask for receipts. Let's see the ID. They will keep the source shadowed or cite them and not, say who they are, but they're going to still ask for receipts, right? They're not just going to, okay, you can say whatever you want to say. They do have a higher level of accountability, and that's where I'm coming from. I hope I've answered your question. Law enforcement could also lie, if you're saying, Ann Taylor, yes, they could. I don't think that the FBI, the Moscow Police Department, and the Idaho State Police are all lying. I just don't. So, but we've seen law enforcement get up on the stand and lie. That's how come O.J. Simpson got exonerated, in my opinion. He was found not guilty because Mark Furman lied. And when he lied about some things that he said, he didn't want to say certain words that he had said, then the jury threw out everything that he said. He lost the credibility. Linda says, hi, Linda. Every time I see his face, I think of those happy, beautiful kids. He seems guilty, but there's a lot we don't know. And I think that's a fair place to be. If you're on the fence and you're not sure, I think that is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with being on the fence. Vic Star says, I think BK didn't want cameras in the courtroom because he didn't want his eyebrows compared. Wow. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that one before, Vic Star. Thanks for bringing that to us and sharing that. Could be. I think he doesn't want cameras in the courtroom because he knows, and this is another reason why I wanted to talk about some of his posts that he made regarding his visual snow. He knows his affect is problematic. He knows he has trouble connecting with people. His eyes, when you see his eyes are kind of look very predatory to me. They just look cold and empty, and not just in one photo, but multiple photos of him. He almost looks like he's like a bird of prey or a dinosaur, a velociraptor, with his affect, the way his eyes and his lips are pursed and his eyes are kind of bulging out. um I think that he doesn't want to be on camera because he doesn't want his affect to be shown, because he knows there's going to be we're all going to be watching and probably diagnosing it and talking about his body language. I don't do body language too much. I tend to lean more towards statement analysis over body language, but I definitely would be, wanting to see what his affect were. Angel, it's okay to have your opinion. I just want the chat to settle down. I don't want anybody disrupting you're welcome to share your opinions. All opinions are welcome. Just share them in a respectful way to other members of the chat so everybody feels comfortable to share their opinions. Jeff says, do you think BK's lawyers bringing up case law from the 1800s was their idea, or was it BK's suggestion? Sure felt like a Hail Mary pass. Yeah, it sure did, didn't it? And we will never know. We will never know what they wanted to do. For those of you that don't know, what BK's attorneys, the reason they've made a third motion that this Judge Sean Judge, has to rule again on January 26th with another motion. They made another motion to throw out the grand jury. And what BK's lawyers want is they want the grand jury indictment, which the grand jury just decides if there's enough to indict the defendant or to not indict. That's all they're deciding. They're not deciding guilt or innocence. Just, is there enough evidence to indict this person and bring them to trial? But and so they just have to find that there's more evidence that leans toward the fact that he, most likely did it, or is definitely worthy of being brought to trial. Well, Ann Taylor wants that standard changed. She wants to go back before the early 1800s, throw out all of Idaho law, which, imagine all of the cases that would be thrown out and would be up for retrial, because she wants to go back and make it beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is problematic for two reasons. One, they cannot make the grand jury go beyond a reasonable doubt, because that would entail putting BK on trial twice, which would then, I believe, Ann Taylor would then immediately claim double jeopardy, right? Two, it would mean all of these other cases that had a grand jury indictment, these would all have to be thrown out, and all of these people would be entitled to a new trial. So I say snowball's chance in hell of that getting passed. But I do think it's interesting. Ann Taylor certainly has been working hard to do her job, and she is a very good lawyer, and that is her job. And I am, give her credit where credit's due. He has a whole team. I don't think he confessed to her. That's my opinion, just from what I've read about him. May, I think that BK, she's asking if BK would have confessed to Ann Taylor. I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have confessed to anybody. But I do think that she has looked at all of the evidence that law enforcement has brought. She has seen the video camera footage. She has seen the cell phone pings. And I mark this video. I predict that she is going to, that the prosecution, that she's going to have to defend the prosecution lining up those cell phone pings with his car traveling to and from that crime scene. I think it's all going to line up. And I think there's going to be something identifying about that car on those video cam footage. We've seen one very blotchy one. They will have multiple things, and it's going to be a license plate or something that definitively, or him behind the wheel. It's going to be something that definitively shows him behind the wheel, and that's why she put him in the car. Let's see. I'm perfectly imperfect. I like that. I like your name. I understand that my previous comment was posted about lying during court proceedings. Not now. Thank you. Mike says they're getting paid to make Bryan happy. Even the judge laughed. It was creative. Yeah, I think that was and the fact that she's coming forward again with another try to get that thrown out, another reason to get the grand jury indictment. I think she's just going to keep trying and delay, because right now he's in jail. He's watching TV. He's not on, this is a capital case. So he's not on death row. He's, in jail, getting a TV, getting his vegan meals, getting to wear a suit to court. This is the best it's going to get for him if he's convicted of this. So, it's to his benefit if he's guilty to delay. Now, if he wanted to be exonerated, I would want to have that speedy trial. Make the prosecution prove it as fast as you can. Pam says not his first time. Well, we know from what I showed you earlier. If you didn't see that, you'll want to back up this and watch the live stream from the beginning. I showed you the college student that he installed video cameras allegedly into her apartment. Someone broke in. It was probably him. He installed video cameras. So why would somebody do that to her? Well, in my opinion, it would be a way to get power, control, and domination over her by watching her when she doesn't know it. Right? And it would be a precursor to what he ultimately does on November 13th. Allegedly, he is innocent until proven guilty. Pam says, I think he didn't get the law enforcement job because of the theft. Yeah. I mean, that theft would have shown up, and it could be the other one too. You're right, Pam. And that is another thing let me just go back to Pam's comment for a second. This is another thing that falls under the purview of what a profiler like John Kelly, he has a YouTube channel. Pat Brown has a YouTube channel, both excellent profilers. A good profiler is going to also tell you that somebody that would do something like this would most likely have a history of some type of medication use. That does fit the profile, and I believe he does fit the profile for this. Me and someone, not you, were talking about this when the trial starts. Angela, hey. Okay, where is the proof that he didn't get the job 2022? The employee list is missing. Well, he didn't get the job. He applied for a job with law enforcement and didn't get it. I mean, you can Google that. It's multiple reputable news sources reported it out. Thank you for your continued coverage on oh, wow. Thank you, Rick. You made my day. I really appreciate it. I really do work hard to try to bring you guys credible, researched information that's based in fact and not go for the cheap clicks and views. Those cuts on his hands. Yeah, let's talk about that, because I enhanced that video footage of his hands. I took screenshots and enhanced it and showed what I believe were cuts on his wrist and on his wrist. Those could take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to fully heal, depending on how deep it is. I believe he did have a cut on the wrist, and that's why the law enforcement pulled him over twice. They allegedly, reportedly, were trying to get body cam footage of his wrists. And maybe we're trying to find out where he was going. But the reason they pulled him over the second time was trying to get that body cam footage. And I did make a video on that. I have a whole playlist on this, and you can look, and I have enhanced those photos. You can look and see. I've circled them, enhanced it. You could decide for yourself what you see in those pictures. In my opinion, there is at least one cut on his right wrist. Red Metal, I also heard that evening bleaching something clean wouldn't hide it from luminol. Is that true? Bleaching something clean wouldn't hide it from luminol. It would hide the DNA. It may not hide luminol, but it would hide DNA. So we don't know if they went through the car with luminol. Ann Taylor didn't talk about that. She just wanted to make sure to get it out in her motion that there was no DNA from one of the victims found in his car, his office, and his home. Now we have to take her at her word. That may have been, things could have changed on what she knows and didn't know. Or maybe he really just did a really good job with that Dickies jumpsuit and kitting out that car. But unfortunately, he dropped the knife sheath. So he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. I'm Perfectly Imperfect says they found the letter from the employer stating they're not going to hire him. Yeah, that's been proven. I'm not going to go pull that up because that's like an easy Google search. You guys can pull that right up. Jeff says, amazing to me that BK could keep his own DNA out of the family trash, but couldn't keep his DNA off the knife sheath laying next to. Well, I have no doubt that it was probably wiped down, but if you get a new knife sheath and you unsnap it, that snap is going to be sticky. So I have no doubt that everything was wiped down very carefully prior to him going in. Unfortunately, he didn't get everything. The snap has little cracks and crevices, and I don't know exactly where they pulled it out from, but somewhere in that snap, they were able to extract DNA that was a match to the cheek swab of Bryan Kohberger in octillion, 1 in octillion chance, which I believe is more than there are people on this planet. Billion is 2, million is 1, octillion is 8. 8 million people, a 1 in 8 million chance. Mike says, I think it's because they said he didn't get the job, but we don't know why. Yeah, we don't know why he didn't get the job. We think it's because of that arrest. So we know he didn't get the job. That's not speculation. That's fact. But we think that that the speculation part is why. And I suspect it's because they would have seen that arrest on his record. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section below. Do you think that that's why he didn't get the job, or did law enforcement just not like him? Did he not interview well? We know he had trouble connecting with people, which is why I wanted to go through those old posts under his name XR when he's talking about his visual snow and how he felt like a sack of meat and how he viewed other people as a sack of meat. So if you can view other people as a sack of meat, it isn't a big jump to think that maybe this person has we call it oppositional defiance disorder when they're kids, because we don't diagnose kids as sociopathic or psychopaths because their brains are still forming. But it would be considered, somebody with oppositional defiance disorder would be considered a budding sociopath. So was he? I don't know. He definitely said he didn't feel anything. He felt no remorse. He felt no empathy. He felt like an empty sack of meat and viewed other people as an empty sack of meat. To me, this would make it very easy for him to go in and do what he did. Oh, don't worry about it, Cynthia. Yeah, there was one lab test pending. This is what Ann Taylor was making a big fuss about. She didn't have everything. Law enforcement had one lab test that was still outstanding. And they hadn't gotten it back yet. That's all that wasn't turned over to her. They turned over everything else, but she could write that in. And it again, with this gag order, it made it really easy to attribute things to that. Oh, the prosecution hasn't turned over everything to the defense team. What are they hiding? Well, they weren't hiding anything. They didn't have the lab test back from the lab. And we learned this in the hearing, but she got her narrative out there, and her job is she just has to find one juror for reasonable doubt, right? Just one juror. Linda says, I never heard BF saw him until somebody just said that. Yeah, that was reported out. I did a video on it. It's in the playlist. You're welcome to go through it. She said that she saw someone, and right after that, Ann Taylor wanted to talk to her. And she did. My understanding, she did sit down with Ann Taylor. or someone from the defense team. Jody says, very suspicious behavior. Yeah, I think the cleaning of the car with your gloves on, sorting your personal trash out. I don't know. When I've gone to visit my parents, I don't sort my personal trash separate from theirs and go put that trash in the neighbor's trash bin outside. I think that's, you know, it's not going to just be that. It's not just going to be the DNA. It's not just going to be the phone pings. It's not just going to be the Dickies jumpsuit. It's not just going to be the K-bar knife, which was ordered on April 22nd, allegedly. It's going to be cumulative. And there's going to be more DNA evidence. Rick, I think you're right. There's going to be more DNA evidence that we don't know about. Oh, thank you, Jody. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up if you're just joining. I know people kind of come and go in these live streams. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys, and thank you so much. I really appreciate your questions. I appreciate your time. It's always interesting to learn what other people have to hear. Thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, I saw that. I don't know where the tunnels came from, but I don't know what it was. It was, and if you know, please don't say, I don't want any drama with any other content creator in my thing. That's not what we're here for. If I would have thought there was any credibility about the tunnels, I would have brought it to you. I would have brought it, but I couldn't find any credible sources talking about these tunnels. Now, all towns and cities have steam, and they have all your telephone lines, your cell phone lines, your electrical lines, all those lines are run underneath cities and towns. So tunnels, but there was no tunnels under that house. When they tore the house down, no tunnels. So that was the end of that. So I think hopefully we can bring that to the conclusion that it deserves to be. Thank you, Pam. Yeah, please, if you know who made the video, please don't talk about it. I don't want any drama with any other content creator, because they could have brought that to you in good faith and may not have been may have really believed it. So it looked like a storage room or something like that. Yeah. And I mean, every town, anything we all have lines for electrical and water, and we have water sewers. We all have that under all of our houses. But that's not the same as a secret tunnel. And there was no secret tunnel leading up to the 1122 King Road house. So I hope we can just put that to bed and not talk about that moving forward. May says, I would not be able to find him guilty beyond a doubt. I have so many questions. Well, I mean, I would think right now that would be a fair assessment, right? Because we haven't seen the evidence. But remember, and reasonable doubt doesn't mean any doubt at all. It just reasonable doubt. And Angel says, I don't believe officers that have already been proven in court to lie, fabricate evidence. Well, there's been no evidence of that in this case. No one has brought forth any information that anybody is lying, because nobody's taken the stand except in the grand jury. So there's been nobody has come forward to say that any police officer has lied. No one has come forward to say any police officer has fabricated. No one has come forward to say any police officer has tampered with evidence or witness testimony. Let's just make that really clear. No, that has not been proved. That's just the gag order has left this gap to which people can throw anything in there. That 8-hour time gap left a gap where people could place anything in there that they thought, any conspiracy evidence. And Jody's right. This is the voice of reason. We don't have all the evidence yet. Maybe in time we will all have a clearer view. Exactly. I think being on the fence is an okay place to be. I really do. I think it's fine. If you're not sure, I think it's absolutely fine. Jackie, hi. She says, yes, he did ask if anyone was arrested and he wanted to be exonerated per his lawyer in Pennsylvania. That's right. He did ask if anyone else had been arrested. And I think that's kind of just, I don't know. I wouldn't like hang my hat on that and be like, well, that's why he's guilty. I wouldn't think that. But it's just like one more little weird thing. Like, why you wouldn't be indignant that you were unfairly arrested. You wouldn't be trying to provide your DNA. You'd make the court go get a court order. You're sorting stuff out, your trash from your parents' trash, and putting your trash in neighbors' garbage. You're out in the middle of the night wearing gloves, meticulously cleaning your car. Law enforcement watched him do it. I think this case is going to be circumstantial. Jeff says, I heard he went on Amazon looking for an eyebrow trimmer. They were all sold out. So he decided to trim them with the K-bar. Oh, okay. I know that's a joke. I know that's a joke. Oh my gosh. I guess I don't want to laugh because this is so serious, but I do think that, sometimes we have the thing. Yeah, I agree. The affect is creepy. And it's not just one photo, it's multiple pictures of him. He almost looks like a dinosaur. His eyes staring down, his lips are kind of pursed together, and he has a very predatory, in my opinion, look about him. You can see why people get, feel creeped out. Let me see if I can get just another shot. That's the same mug shot. Let me see. There's him with the there he is with that same look at the eyes and the lips all pursed together. Here's him in the car. Watch the car video. I showed you guys a little bit of it. Again, the eyes kind of wide and those lips pursed together as he tells the police officer all the reasons why he does not deserve to get a ticket, even though he was sitting in the crosswalk. And then look at these faces of these beautiful young people. And tell me, how did they deserve anything that happened to them? So I think they're going to show those phone pings all the way back from the 1122 King Road house, even though he took this big detour to go home after he left the 1122 King Road house, allegedly. I think they are going to show that those phone pings line up with his car, with the footage of his car. Linda says to Steve, you're right. Those cuts he had on his hands. Yeah, I did enhance it. I saw at least what I believed was a cut on his right wrist. Hey, Kami, good to see you. Yeah, please hit the like button. Thank you to our mods who are here. I really appreciate you. And we have our channel members in the house. And just see if we can get a couple more questions yet. Pam says, to be a cop, one needs to take a psychological evaluation test. I'm thinking this is another reason he didn't become a police officer if he made it that far. Wow. Oh, Pam. You're right. You're probably right. I would think that if you were going to take a position like that, handling that kind of power, I would think that a psych eval would be really important. Could be. I'm leaning more toward the fact that I think they would have been able to see that arrest, even though it was expunged and the university couldn't see it. Sonia's in the house. Hey, Sonia. Good to see you. And Jewel says, they did check the showers piping, as I cannot get over someone covered walking out. There would be a trail. Well, it depends how close he got, and it depends if he had that Dickies jumpsuit on. We've seen that in the affidavit, right? So he would have stripped all that off. I believe he stripped everything off, dropped it all into a bag, and had a change of clothes in the car, and then went home and showered. And that's why the shower curtain was missing. Remember, the shower curtain was also missing. And I don't know about you, but when I go visit people, my family, I don't take my shower curtain with me. So people are like, yeah, it could have been moldy. It could. But again, it's just one more thing. That in and of itself may not mean anything, but it's going to be the preponderance of the evidence. That's what I think. Jeff says, I emailed you 2 images about the 1122 King Road demolition. I hope it proves that there's no tunnel under the house. Thank you. Maybe I should make a video about that. Audrey says, I live in the UK. I would never undress with open windows. What's wrong with you guys? Well, nobody said anybody undressed. in front of open windows. I don't think anybody's ever alleged that. I just think that the windows were open and the girls they didn't keep their windows closed 24/7. And I think being perched up there, he would have had, and if he had binoculars or if he didn't have binoculars, he would have had a really good view. And at night, if the curtains weren't drawn, but it doesn't mean anybody was undressing that way. It just means that maybe the girls felt really safe. Remember, nothing like this happened. And Grizzly True Crime, Gisela, made a really good point. I can't remember which video it was, but she said that nothing like this happened prior to BK coming to town, right? And he came to town months before, and this is what happened. And nothing like this happened since he's been arrested in Moscow, Idaho. I think it is a very safe town. Justice for the Idaho students. Yes, ma'am. I'm 30 miles from Pullman. Oh my gosh, are you going to go to the trial, Sonia? If you are, I would love to interview you. And I just want to thank Sonia for being a channel member for 22 months. So great. Pam made a good point. Did I miss it? All right, let me see, Pam, if I can find your comment. I'm seeing in chat, good point, Pam, but I don't see the comment. If anybody knows what it was, I would love to know what the comment was, because I did miss it. The chat's going by pretty fast. I don't believe he took baths. Yeah, I know. I've heard that. Maybe he took baths, or maybe he showered without a shower curtain. But he was on the second floor. If you shower without a shower curtain, water's going to come down. If you do that all the time, water's going to come down into your neighbors. So I believe he had a shower curtain. I believe he took it. I think he knew he lost that knife sheath. I think he was feeling really paranoid. And I do think he took it. Yeah, Americans use curtains, but it doesn't, I don't know where you're getting the assumption that the girls were dressing with the curtains open. That the girls were undressing there. I'm not sure where that's coming from. So that's what I'm pushing back against. There's been no evidence that happened. That's all I'm saying. Jody says, my daughter moved from Idaho 2 years ago. I'm in Utah. Oh, I bet you're having a nice winter. Well, I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're a channel member, I'm going to be doing a channel member live stream next. Feel free to join me, and I will see you guys next time. I do want to say thank you to our mods. Thank you to all of our channel members. Without you, and if you just are joining as a channel member, your name will be added for the next video. Actually, tomorrow's video is already up, so it'll be the video after that. So the one, not tomorrow, but the next day. But your names will be added into all my future videos. And if you haven't subscribed,